welcome back to another episode of 66 Books, where we use the Bible as a framework to discuss how to level up our lives using Israelite spirituality. Today I have a special guest with me here for today's episode. Everyone say hello to Deborah. So Deborah is joining me here today. We're going to be flipping through the book of Daniel to frame our discussion on what it's like growing up as an Israelite. So if you're excited for our special guest and topic here today, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. But with that, we're going to go ahead and dig right into today's juicy topic. So before we delve right into the topic, I do want to play a little game of a rapid fire question, just so that we can get to know Deborah a little bit more and see what goes all up in her head and her life. So I'm going to ask you some questions and you're going to give me the answer, and that's how we'll start. Okay?
All right.
You ready?
Awesome.
Okay, so you are a singer. You're really into music. So of course I had to ask, what are the top 3 songs on your playlist?
The top 3 songs on my playlist. Currently, Too Much by Drake. And then I have Pink Panthers. I love her music.
She's a vibe.
Time With Me by Pink Panthers. And then One More Day by New Edition. It's just a beautiful
That's a song. It
It's
is.
so
It makes you want to cry. I used to listen
in the sunset. It's such a beautiful song.
Yeah, I used to listen to it as like my fall asleep playlist. So yeah, that's a good song. Okay, my next question is, what are 4 things that you love? And it can be anything.
4 things. Okay, I of course love singing. I love songwriting. I love screenwriting, and I love acting.
Ooh, so it's all in like the entertainment thing. Those are your passions. I love that. So then, speaking of entertainment, I've got to know, what's your favorite movie of all time? This is a tough question.
This is a tough question because like someone who like watches movies a lot. I would say Princess and the Frog.
Okay.
As a little girl, I was obsessed with that movie. I
don't know why I didn't see that.
The blankets, the Barbie dolls, the toys, all of it. I had it all. I was obsessed with Princess and the Frog. But I don't know. I usually favorite movies I would count as being like more comforting, and because that movie deals with a lot of voodoo, I don't want to watch it before bed. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not it for me. But I really do love that movie. But I think one of my favorite movies of all time that I would also consider a comfort movie that I would like watch before bed.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Anastasia?
No, it's not. But I love that movie.
Yeah,
it's Enchanted. I know the name.
Yeah, you were obsessed.
But I love that movie. It's so goofy. It's so fun.
It is funny. When I watched it with you, I didn't realize how funny it was.
I love that movie so much. But yeah.
So you're a Disney girly. Interesting. All right. So it's summer, which is actually one of my favorite seasons of all time. So something I want to ask you is, what's one thing that reminds you of summer?
One thing that reminds me of summer? I guess the movies I grew up watching. Like there was always like certain movies I would watch like once school's out. Like Judy Moody.
I actually remember you watching
so that. Summer. I would always watch
you
that.
You had it on replay.
Or like Teen Beach Movie. Or Camp Rock, like summer movies. Camp Rock is it, like.
So the nostalgia of it brings summer. I like that. So then my next question for you is, what are you grateful for? I mean, I'm grateful for like now realizing like I'm really grateful for my talents. Like I've always been grateful for my talents, but like now like realizing it, I feel like that's the main thing I've been grateful for. Of course, I'm grateful for my family and culture and all that. Disclaimer.
But like, this summer, like I haven't been doing much this summer, but my talents have made it like feel like I have been. I know I haven't been like venturing around the world, but like I feel good about this summer. I feel like I've definitely improved on a lot of my talents. So that's something I'm really grateful for, because that really got me out of my boredom and stuff like that.
I love that, because being productive, I feel like a lot of people feel like being productive is like doing work or like studying, but it can literally like be something as simple as like learning a new skill or like developing it. So I love that you did that, because I feel like when I was younger, my summers were just blurs of like watching cable. Like you had summer camp, which was fun, but it's like that's really interesting. The idea of feeling like accomplished and like you're progressing with your talent. So I might steal that. I'm working now, so summer's different, but I love that. So then I know you sing, and that was born out of like Israel, which cultivated it, like performing at different feasts and different things. So I'm curious to know, what's your favorite memory related to Israel?
My favorite memory, I have a lot of favorite memories, but there's, can I say two?
Yeah, you can.
Okay, my favorite memory, I guess when I first like wrote my song, it was for New Moon, because I remember when we were younger, we would have New Moon at the house, and we would
before we got a place.
I remember that like we would always perform like at New Moon. We would have story times, or someone would sing.
We'd have performances.
And I remember I wrote this song. This was like one of my first ever songs I like have memory of writing, and I was like 3 or 4, and it was a song called Boom Ba Boom.
Oh, I remember that.
And I went up there and started singing it.
Boom, da boom.
Yeah, that was the song. That was it. A second memory I remember is probably the first time I helped make cornbread. I remember it was for New Moon, and my dad was in the kitchen, and he had this like blue bowl, and like he was like cooking the
I
batter
remember
for
the
it.
blue bowl.
Yes. And I went to the kitchen. He was like, "Do you want to learn how to make cornbread?" I was like, "Yeah." So I kind of helped him. I didn't really help him. I was a toddler, but it was a memory that I remember.
It's so interesting because Dad is the first person that taught me how to cook too.
Wow.
And it's like Mom cooks all the time, but like he taught me how to make fried eggs. The first thing.
Those fried eggs are good.
And so I want to know, what is a piece of advice that you'll never forget?
Okay, so this is probably a cliche one. It's kind of like 2 in 1, and like it's do your own thing, kind of like be yourself. I used to get annoyed when my mom would be like, "Oh, don't follow your friends or whatever," because I'm like, "No, they're my friends or whatever." But she's right, and that's something that I realize as I get older. It's like when you try to force yourself to be in a certain type of group, you just realize it's exhausting.
Yes.
It's so exhausting. And I've tried that before, and then I just realized I'm not being myself. And it just, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right, and it feels exhausting and tiring. Like, why am I keep doing this when it's not enough for these people? So I just...
Yeah,
me.
And I think that's really important when you're in Israelite, because you already have to do so many different things day to day. It's exhausting to have to hide and lie and pretend to be who you are. Like, it's tiring at a point.
I agree, because like when I in elementary school, middle school, like when your friends ask you, "Oh, why didn't you go to the Christmas party?"
Yes.
You gotta be like, "Oh, well, my cat died." No, we don't have a cat though. But no, I'm literally like, I have to
just making up white lies.
It's just like I can't. It's like if there's other people across the world that can say, "Oh, well, I'm this, I'm that," and I do this culture, and people are like, "Oh, okay, well then I can do it too."
Exactly.
So that's why I'm just like, "Oh, I'm an Israelite. I don't do this." Period.
Yeah, but it takes time to get there sometimes. For some people, they're like straight out the box, this is who I am.
It
but
definitely
I think
took time.
It's sometimes it's almost like a learning curve, if you will. But I love that you said that, because I think it will tie into our discussion later on as well. So I have, I think, 4 more questions for you for the rapid fire. So one, you talked about, being a leader, not a follower, especially with your friends and the community. So my next question for you is, like, who is someone in your life that you admire?
Someone in my life that I admire. I admire a lot of people. I admire my family mainly. If I really had to think, I admire everyone, but like my sister. I don't know, because listen, like as a little kid, like I've always looked up to you in such a big way. You had such a big impact on me. But like if I really have to think about like my siblings. You, Levi, Jetty, like there's different things that and different characteristics that I see and that I pick up, and like I should be more like that.
And that's cool too when you get older, is when you start to admire people that are younger than you, because I feel like you said, like each of our siblings, there's something about them that you admire and take like a piece out of. And I think that's really beautiful, because sometimes people are like, you shouldn't look up to people that are younger than you, or like there are these like age limits to things. But when it comes to Israel, like you think about David being a young boy, like that doesn't really apply. So I love that insight that you shared. Okay, we're going to get a little spicy. So I'm curious to know, what is your toxic trait?
My toxic trait. Procrastinating.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's what I do. I did it this year.
People.
It's not good, but it happens a lot. Like, I cannot focus. I get sidetracked. I'm like, okay, I'll do this. Let me get a snack real quick. Let me watch this show. After this episode,
snack will get you.
After this episode, then I'll do this, and then I never end up doing it. It's so bad. It's really bad.
And so then to parallel your toxic trait, what is your favorite trait about yourself?
My funniness. I think, honestly, I'm the funniest in the family.
I'm sorry, I knew you were going to say that.
I am such a funny person. It's just people got to get to know me, because, like, I can crack a few jokes. I'm really funny.
Yeah, you are pretty funny.
I'm pretty funny.
I'll say, like, top 3 of the family. Top 3 out of 6. And then my last question of the rapid fire for you is, what is a Bible story, passage, quote that inspires you the most?
Inspires me? Probably, if I really have to think about it, like, back to what I said before, like, you said before, like, getting, like, inspired by younger people. Maybe Josiah.
Oh,
because, I mean, he was running the kingdom at, like, what, 8, 7? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's just such a big impact. And, like, being a Rise member and youth and seeing that, it's like, if he can do it, I know he had the help of his mom, but like
other people,
I can do it too. So I've like definitely wrote songs about that, so I've been on the way.
Ooh.
That like
we got some like, what is it called, behind the scenes, some tea. You heard it here first. She's about to release one, hopefully.
But yeah, that's just a little hint for you.
Got it on camera, so gotta hold it to you.
But yes.
But no, okay, so I think that's a wonderful note to end on, because I never really thought about it that way. I love what you said. It's kind of like, well, if he can do it, who am I to say that I can't do something? Like, if this young boy can take ownership of a whole kingdom, then why can't I take ownership of the things that are going on in my life now?
Can I add something?
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, my namesake, for anyone wondering. Of course, I'm inspired by my namesake.
I feel obligated to do that one. But no, I love that, and I love that, like, you at your age, you're even mature enough to think about that, because I'm not even sure if I was at that point when I was your age. Oop, I dropped an earring. But that's really interesting, and I want to delve into that a little bit more. But first, I want to talk more about the process of growing up Israel and what it takes to finally get to that moment where you're taking ownership of your religion. And I say ownership of religion because Officer Charmaine and Elder Michael did an excellent, I recommend watching it if you haven't, It's Not Just My Parents' Religion. And I want to explore something that Officer Charmaine mentioned about this, like, she was like, when is that, it's interesting to think about when is that transition where you go from like, okay, mommy said it's Saturday school, so we're going to Saturday school, or like, it's time to go to Friday night Bible study, like, mommy's going, to like, oh no, like, I gotta be there, like, I'm rushing to get there, I'm not staying at home. But I want to transition into it by just talking about getting to that point. So today we're exploring the story of Daniel, and we're going to look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And there's this really good Friday night. I feel like I'm plugging all the Friday nights, but there's one that stuck with me for years, and it's one that St. Louis did about double consciousness, which is, it has its own meaning, but they applied it to Israel. And it's just this idea of like, we live in the world, and there's like a way that we have to navigate when we're, outside, like among people that don't serve the God of Israel, versus being here, like with your family, serving the God of Israel. And it almost feels sometimes like you're living a double life at first, depending on where you're at in your Israelite journey. And I feel like the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego represents that really well, because like even their name changed. Daniel's name was changed to Belshazzar, sounds like a wizard. And like Mishael and Hananiah, like those were their real names, but they had, I think, Babylonian names that they had to take on. And so to me, it kind of represents that double life, having to, figure out how to navigate the world as an Israelite and be smart, not deny the God of Israel, but travel. So I guess my first question for you is, what was your earliest memory of being different as an Israelite?
Being different. We probably have to do something with school, to be honest.
That makes sense.
Anytime they would have a Halloween or Christmas party, I couldn't participate, so I'd have to go to a different classroom or outside. And, you know, I mean, it's not like, it looks fun. Okay, I'm going to be honest, as an Israelite person, the parties look fun. Like, they have candies, they have snacks, they get to watch movies. Like, as a kid, that looks fun to you. But, like, you know, you're not supposed to do it. And, you know, they do things to kind of make it look fun, but it's really bad. You know what I'm saying? And just having to leave and have people like watch you, like, oh, why is she leaving? Is she a bad kid? Like, it's just like, oh, tiring. But yeah, definitely having to be like excluded from that and having to just not, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I realized, kind of like, oh, I'm not from them. And then also, my parents always told me, like, when you think about it, when you go to school, you're the only Israelite there. You have to like put that in perspective, and when you do, you're like, oh wow, like. And
it's interesting you say that, because that wasn't the case for me. I think starting off school I did, but later on, you know, our cousins, Cam and Jay, went to the same school as me. So like, I think from like second grade up to high school, I always had at least one person there at the school. So I was never like truly alone. But I want to go back to something you said about it being like exhausting, having to constantly explain yourself. Like, can you talk more about that?
Constantly explain. I mean, like, just topics at the lunch table where like friends would like oh, well, today I'm gonna go to the Christmas party. What did you get for Christmas? And just kind of have to like shut it down and be like, oh, well. You know what I'm saying? It's exhausting having to lie so much. Like, I don't understand people that like lie like that. Like, all the time. We all lied before, but like, it's exhausting. Like, it's tiring to have to keep this narrative that you're something else. Like, I mean, Hannah Montana got tired of it after a whole while. She had to pull off that way. She was like, I couldn't do. Like, it's like that for me. Like, you just like after a while, you just like you gotta break down the wall and just kind of. Be myself. And
I think that's so important because, like you said, like I feel like I started off by being like, oh, like I'm an Israelite, you know, when you're younger. But like you said, like for me, it was like, okay, you're getting sent out the room. Like people constantly asking questions, like, well, why did you leave? Like you don't celebrate Christmas, And it's like, I think sometimes it was hard for me to explain what an Israelite is, because you're like, oh, we serve the God of Israel, but they're like, well, what's that? And you're like, how do I explain who God is? Like that sounds like a philosophy question. So like it felt like such a huge undertaking. You start to like just lie to like get through it. Like you're doing what you're supposed to do, but like you're lying just to get past it. And like you said, it's exhausting. You realize like I'm lying to not only the people that I'm at school with, but some of my close friends too. And it's like, well, what does that say about me if I'm still like constantly lying? Like, am I still an honest or integral person if I just tell the truth to my family? Like, shouldn't I be telling the truth to like my friends too, you know?
And funny story that you bring that up, just kind of brushing it off. When I was trying to like get into the mode of like telling people that I was an Israelite, they'd be like, well, what's an Israelite? I'd be like, if you want more information, you can go to Israelite.com and then you get all your answers. I was just like trying to dismiss it all because I was like, I ain't got time to explain this.
That's a good plug.
That's literally what it was like.
And you know, I feel like that's a good plug too, because now that I'm older, and that conversation will sometimes come up at work too, it's like if you don't tell them to go to the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, they'll look it up on their own. And if they find Hebrew Israelite, you gotta be like, no.
Yeah, I have to make it clear that it's different. I always have to make it clear.
Yes, because it's more common. But I know you talked about, you know, this transition from like just being honest about who you were. Like, do you remember like the significant moment where you just started telling people like who you are? Do you remember a time where you did that, and like what was the outcome? Were you shunned? Like, how did people react when you started?
It wasn't the outcome that I expected.
So what's the outcome that you expected?
Like what? If you don't do this, then you're gonna go to hell. Like, like I expected that. I was like, but like the first time, I think I told my closest friend, like my best friend, and he was like, oh, okay. It was nothing. It was like, he was like, oh, okay, like understand. Like, I think one time my friend, I had another friend, she was like gonna get everyone like Christmas presents or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I don't do Christmas. I'm an Israelite. I don't do any of that. And she was like, okay, you sure? And I was like, yeah, I'm sure. I'm good. You don't have to give me. She's like, well, I feel bad. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll be good. I'm happy. And then, yeah. And then, like, oh, another thing that they always ask, they're like, I feel bad for you. You don't have Christmas?
Yeah.
I'll be like, no, I have my holy days.
The teachers
always
have
to
even said that
yeah.
to some of y'all.
I was like, no, I have my holy days. I'm good. I'm fine. So.
And that's what's so interesting is like sometimes when you're at first like very young and not comfortable with sharing who you are as an Israelite, we like make up these like horrible responses in our head versus like when you actually do it, especially starting off with the people that care about you in your life, the people that matter, it's really not a big deal to them. They accept it. I know at one point, one of my close friends in elementary school, she used to annoy me a little bit because I was like, girl, you doing too much. But she used to like notify the teacher for me.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Like it would be like a Christmas thing, and because she knew I was Israel, she's like, it's Christmas, Rachel can't be here.
So
she has
cute,
to go. And it's like she would do it. And I was like, okay, like girls, like you did too much.
But it's sweet.
It was sweet. It was. So it's like it's sometimes not as bad as you think it is, and even if they do have that response, then they're not someone that should be in your life, period, because that's who you are. And when you start to embrace it, you know, people accept it, and sometimes they even take pride in it too, which is so interesting. But so now that you are more comfortable sharing who you are as an Israelite, I do just want to ask you, like, overall, what do you think is the most challenging part of being an Israelite?
Challenging part, I guess, not being able to do everything. Like, I feel like some people that come into Israel think like we have these like strict rules. No, but we're different from everybody else. We're not the same. So there's certain things that we can't do that other people would. I guess maybe like I'm trying to think of an example. I mean, remaining like being like a maiden kind of, because like sometimes you'll think about wanting to have like a boyfriend or something. I mean, I've definitely had those thoughts before, but like you realize you don't really need it because it's not what you need in your life right now. But sometimes you have those thoughts because your friends are out there. They've had somebody before. I've never dated anyone, you know. So sometimes you're a little interested, but it's like being in Israel. You know, there's certain rules you have to follow for a reason, and you have to distinct yourself from the rest because we're not like everybody else. And then another thing that I would say is probably difficult, like just like remembering certain things, like have to be very prestigious with certain, like maybe like Sabbath day, like you can't eat this. Just having to remember that. Maybe that's like a little challenging. I don't really mess up on Sabbath, but it can be challenging sometimes.
Especially when you're younger. You'd be like catching your little siblings, nieces, nephews, like, did you check that?
That's vinegar.
It's Sabbath. What's wrong with you? And they go like I'm sorry.
And you're just like, oh, dang.
But I think that's very interesting what you said about, you know, the roles that we have in Israel, because I think I can understand that, because I don't know, I think we live in a society today where anything goes. And unlike the older generation, I like that we live in that society. Don't kill me. But I think it makes being an Israelite easier because people are like, do you? And so when you share Israel, they're like accepting of it. It's nothing because people are doing whatever they want to do. So for me, it's made my life easier in the workplace, doing different things, because I know if anyone tries to come up against me, I can be like, diversity inclusion committee, where are you? Like, you know what I'm saying? But it's true. People feel like, you know, we have a lot of rules and regulations, and I just think one of the most important parts of that is just understanding why we do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are reasons why, you know, we don't, you know, get tattoos or like dress a certain way or like carry ourselves a certain way culturally, and a lot of times it's not just because we're like trying to be conservative and be like, you can't do this and that, and like it's really because a lot of things in this society are spiritual and people don't make that connection. Like, it's so funny because I was watching a documentary about, it was like a tribe in the Pacific Islands, and they were talking about a process that they do where they essentially will tattoo their bodies as a way to basically serve their god or gods. And so it's like learning about different cultures as well really helps you to see how the laws and the statutes and the commandments the God of Israel has put in place are for a reason, because he wants us to serve him a certain way, and there are a lot of other things that people do to serve their gods differently. So I love that you brought that out, because it is very honest. It's like you see your friends getting tattoos or, you know, doing all these different things, and it's like, it's hard because like you said, there's so few of us. Like, you're the only one at your school, you know what I mean? So I think something that can help with that challenge is just understanding why and taking more pride in your Israelite culture. Like, not always focusing on what we can't do, but having pride in some of the things that we already do and that we can do that others don't, I think helps with that. And so speaking of challenges of being an Israelite and just being different in the world, I want to go ahead and jump into Daniel chapter 3. We're going to read verse 14 to 19 to frame this next part of our discussion. So let's get into it.
Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made well. But if ye worship not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated.
So what I love about this scripture and why I chose it for today's discussion is I feel like during the life of an Israelite, there are some points in your life where you encounter people that are really up against you because you are different, and they, want to butt heads with you. I mean, we see it in the story of Esther with Haman. I know I've seen it in my life and other people's lives where they just made it difficult for you to do the things that you need to do, whether it's like, no, I'm not giving you time off for Day of Atonement or etc. But what I love about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego is they really exemplify one of my favorite quotes. Like, y'all, I told y'all I love quotes, okay? I keep them ready to go. But one of my favorite ones is, faith doesn't worry and value doesn't beg. When you have done everything you possibly can, you have faith in the God of Israel, and you trust him, and you built that relationship, when certain situations like what arises here with Nebuchadnezzar happens, you really learn not to worry. Your mindset is like, my God's got me. My God's got me. Like, if I am trying to serve my God correctly, there's no way anyone that comes up against me can win, as long as I'm doing what's right. And you see it here. Like, they were so spicy with it too. Like, they were so spicy because they're like, Nebuchadnezzar, verse 16. We are not careful to answer thee in this matter. They said, listen, when it comes to my God, I'm not going to be careful. I'm not going to be worried. Like, oh my God, how is he going to take this? Like, because when you think about it, it's so offensive. Like, how dare you come here and tell me to bow down to another God, an image that you made? Like, I can only think about, like, if a mandate went out in this country that to happen, like, part of you would be a little fearful, just being honest, but then part of you would get really upset. It's like, how dare you? Like, how dare you? And you can feel that. But the reason why I want to use this as a discussion is another one of my favorite quotes that I've shared here, which is, You show people how to treat and respect you by what you allow. And so I think when we talk about working on ourselves and self-development and trying to be better, a huge part of that is setting non-negotiable. So things that you are not willing to give up because parts of yourself are so important to keep. Like, I know it's just very important to sit down with yourself and ask yourself the question, what do I need in my life to keep my peace? To be in tune with God, or, to feel connected to, my family, my partner, my friends. Like, what are the boundaries I need to set in order to make sure those things are good? And so, like, for example, for me, I've shared before that, I didn't used to pray every day in my younger years, and I tried to change that. So, like, a non-negotiable for me was, praying 1 time a day. And now recently I did another 40-day challenge, and now 2 times a day, in the morning and the evening. That's a non-negotiable for me. Another one that I've added as well is, like, on Saturdays, we have morning service. It's not required. It's not a law like, new moon and Sabbath, but I've decided, I'm going to make sure that I prioritize being there, because it's important for me to at least once a week be in that space with the God of Israel, with my brethren, So I want to, now that I'm done rambling, I do want to ask you, like, what are some of the boundaries or non-negotiables you've put in place, either with, like, yourself or, like, friends and family, like, boundaries you've set to where you've decided to protect your spirituality, if that makes sense. Like, here we see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like, Nebuchadnezzar was crossing a boundary, and they were like, absolutely not. What are things that you do in your life to protect your spirituality?
To protect my spirituality, I've gone a little more like you and started praying a lot more than just, because usually before school we pray, we do our pledge, we go. But before then, when we were not at school, we're not going anywhere, I would just, go about my day. But I started to be...
Sorry to cut you, but isn't it funny though? Because sometimes I feel like my unconscious mind was like, well, I'm staying home today, and this is a safe space. Like, we call upon the God of Israel. Like, I don't know why that was the thing.
But I understand it, because that was me. Like, but I've gotten better. Like, this summer, I've devoted to getting up every morning and praying. There has been a few times where I messed up a bit and forgot about it, but then I would do it once I remember. Yeah. But yeah, I've gotten better with trying to build a more stronger connection with the God of Israel and trying to pray more so I can be in tune with that. But I think that's, like, definitely one of the biggest boundaries I've set so far.
Can I ask, do you remember what made you decide to start doing that?
I just want to build a stronger, like, relationship spiritually. I want to be better. I want to be a better Israelite. Like, I think I'm a good Israelite as it is, but I want to be better. I want to
continue to grow.
And I want to, when you do that, you feel better, not just that you did that, but, like, you feel better about yourself. Like, you feel better spiritually. Like, it's kind of like that feeling, like, after Day of Atonement, like, you feel cleansed in a way. It's just like every time after I go to Saturday, I feel more inspired. It's proof that it works, and it just makes me feel good about myself.
And I love that you said that, because I feel like it connects to what we said before about this idea of productivity, like feeling like you are making progress or accomplishing things doesn't have to be just for, like, your career goals, like becoming, like, a future superstar, singer. It doesn't always have to be like we make goals for our careers, and even, like, working out, how that makes you feel like you were productive that day or progressive. And I feel like the same can apply spiritually, like you mentioned. Like, you can, I think this is so interesting, sorry, I'm, like, all over the place, but it's like, I don't know, it's like you set yearly goals about, like, your personal life and your career life. So, like, why not do that with Israel and your spirituality? Because, like you mentioned, like, this is life. We're always growing, and we want to make sure that we're progressing when it comes to our relationship with the God of Israel. So I love that you mentioned that, this idea of, like, productivity in terms of your spirituality. Like, how are you progressing? How are you leaving with, like, like, that feel good feeling that you get after you did a nice workout and you woke up early, like, you didn't want to do it, but you did it. Like, you can get that with Israel. And so I love that idea. I feel like usually when I make my year goals for Israel, I'm thinking about like the projects I'm in, or like doing things for like DOZ or like Rise or whatever, but just like thinking about how you can focus on your relationship with the God of Israel is something I think I'll mull over even more so. So thank you for that. Okay, so my next question, I want to circle back to what we talked about in the beginning about that Saturday message. It's not just my parents' religion. So my question to you is, when did you experience that shift to where it was no longer like, Mommy said I need to go to Day of Atonement to cleanse my sins or whatever, so I'm going to go. But it was like, no, like this is for me, like this is personal, like I have to be there for me. When did that happen for you?
Well, there's always a question that like occurs in my mind, like, why do you want to be in Israel? Like, why are you doing this? And anytime I get that question in my head, I think about everything that's occurred in my life. Like, as an Israelite and being so spiritual and religious, you see certain things, like signs that can like confirm that. And there's so many signs, it's like there's no way this is a coincidence. I say a big shift that like really transpired to me was when I was baptized. I was young, but fresh out of elementary school.
I know, you were like 10 or something?
I was 11.
Oh, wow.
But I think that also is like, this is like, it was so beautiful. I felt it was just, words can't even describe it. It was beautiful. And I think that moment I realized, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be forever. I want to be an Israelite forever. And I feel like that's something that really, just really snapped for me when that happened. And then also just knowing, like, once you're baptized, you're responsible for your own soul.
Yes,
so
that will put you,
that also,
that'll have you thinking real hard. For me, I was really, I was like, the rest is on my parents. Okay, so now I can really start again.
But I think that moment is definitely when I realized, like, this is more than just my parents told me about it. It's something that I want to be a part of forever.
I think that's so inspiring, and it is true what you said. It's like, well, this is what I want to say. I think that question that you asked is so important, and I think everyone should ask themselves that question and write it down and like hold on to their answer. Because we were doing a Bible study recently with the girls here in Atlanta, and that same thing brought up where it was like, I feel like it's very important to say you should not feel guilty for questioning like, okay, like, why do I believe in the God of Israel, or is God real? Like, you should lean into that question and use it to like explore your spirituality more and go on a journey to decide for yourself.
Because I don't want you to fake it.
No, don't fake it, please. That's probably dangerous for yourself as well. Like, don't be here just for your parents or your friend or your partner or whoever. Like, you really have to take time to like write down that question, like you said, like, why am I an Israelite? Why do I want to be an Israelite? And develop that relationship with the God of Israel, and see if you see what others are talking about. See if you see a transition in your life. Like what you mentioned, signs and confirmations are huge. Like, that's when I fear, like you're happy when you see, but you also fear like, oh my God, like this is real, for real. And it helps you to believe, to have that faith, so you don't have to worry. Okay, so
back to what you're saying about not like being there because of your friends or family. What happens if that relationship takes a shift? What happens then? So like, it's very important that you make sure you're there for yourself and not for other people.
Because things are fleeting. You know, one thing I've realized or know is that, you know, when it comes to life, the only thing that you can count on being consistent is yourself. You never know what life is going to throw at you or what's going to change. So it's very important that you learn to trust yourself as well. That's a way I've been trying to like reshift my mind, is like, I think we have to realize that we have to have a relationship with ourselves. I know that sounds really weird, but it's like you should treat yourself like a best friend. You know what I'm saying? You should get to know yourself. You should be confident in the things that you believe and do, because at the end of the day, that is the one consistent thing you have in your life, is yourself and God, really. So it's very important. I love what you shared, because that's a great tip. And so My next question for you is, we talked about the challenging moments that we have in Israel. We saw with the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, those times where, people outside of Israel were really just trying tussle with you and be huge barriers to you serving your God and being yourself. So I'm curious, from your own experience, what advice would you give to someone in terms of learning how to be embracing who they are as an Israelite?
I would say find something that you're good at inside the nation, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of talents or things that people knew they never had can fit into. I feel like finding a way to be able to insert something about yourself into being in the nation can help you feel a little more confident about who you are, and then also make it easier for you. I know a lot of people before Israel, they didn't even sing, and now they're the best singers in Israel. Yeah. And I feel like that's definitely a way to kind of get into find what you're good at and how you can contribute, and just feed that in, and then I feel like it will just get easier because it's your work or job. You're doing something that you love, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I don't want to compare that to a job, but it's you want to do something that you love, and if you put in what you love and Israel together, it kind of.
See, I love what you're saying about this, because I want to connect the dots. So I feel like it goes back to a Saturday message, again, I keep going, but that Priest Doreen and teacher Jaden did, which was be yourself, everyone else is taken. I think that was the title. But I just talked about being prideful in who you are. And I say that to say, you talked about finding something that you love. And I think a huge part of learning how to be confident in general is first focusing on the things that you love about yourself. Yeah. Because when you love something, you are far less likely to want to give it up or to hide it. Mm-hmm. So like you said, focusing on the aspects of Israel that you love, whether it's, a holy day, or it's the connection that you have with the God of Israel, those talents that you are seeing grow and multiply, and how that's able to be shared with people, focusing on the reasons why you love being an Israelite, like you mentioned, is really going to help you to be less afraid in those challenging moments with other people. And I think that's even more important to note, because ultimately fear of not fitting in or being different, I think, is rooted in the insecurity of not belonging. Yeah. So something that I also love that you said is get involved with the nation. A lot of reasons why people are so willing to give up their identity and follow the mold is because they don't feel like they belong somewhere, and so they're willing to dilute themselves to fit in. So like you said, finding your place in the nation and growing close to your brethren can help you give that sense of belonging, like you said, can help you make you feel more confident. And again, when you love something, you're less likely, you're gonna be no, this is mine, I'm holding on to it. It's learning to appreciate it really helps. So I love that. I love what you said. And what's even greater about being an Israelite is the God of Israel really does come through for us. When we show our faith in those challenging moments and really lean on to him and trust him, he comes through. And I feel like this transitions really well into my next scripture, which is Daniel chapter 3. We're going to start from verse 23. Let's get into it.
And these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished, and rose up in haste, and spake, and said unto his counselors, Did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True, O king. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace, and spake, and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire, and the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their heads singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word, and yielded their bodies, that they may not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree, that every people, nation, and language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon.
So again, the reason why I shared this scripture is because it just shows how powerful the God of Israel is, and the reason why you should embrace being who you are as an Israelite, because the God of Israel has always got us. Like as it says here, like 3 men went in, but Nebuchadnezzar saw 4 forms, right? Something was with them. Something was there protecting them. And I think it's really important for us to think about that through our lives. Don't be out here being rude to people when it comes to being an Israelite. I think that's so interesting when you see like Christians like hound in on people that go against their lifestyle, because when you read the scripture, we were quite tolerant people. Like, unless the God of Israel was like worried about us serving another God, like we accepted strangers. You know, when you read the story of, you know, the great Exodus, like there was more than what was initially Israel that came with us. We were very tolerant, but you just see that like gotcha moment, and you see how like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's faith really came through, because Nebuchadnezzar literally says, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and he makes a decree that anyone that speaks against the God of Israel will be cut in pieces, and their houses should be made a dunghill. Like, that's crazy, but what's... Maybe it's not as crazy, because I know that there are brethren in this nation that have very similar stories where someone came up against them and they got proven wrong. Our dad has a really interesting story that's for another day, but we've literally seen that. And so I think these moments allow us to grow closer to the God of Israel. So I do want to ask you, has there ever been a time in your life or a moment where God of Israel really came through for you and your prayer was answered and that made you feel closer to him?
Well, there's multiple like stories,
which is good.
There's multiple stories. I can really think of one, but one thing I know, I think this year I was struggling a lot with biology. Science is not my easiest subject. It's not for me, but I know I was so nervous. I didn't really study that well. I feel like could have been a little better, and I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna do good on this final or whatever. I mean, I studied, but it wasn't that good. Because I should have did it before, you know, I procrastinated, that's a trait. But I was nervous, but I prayed, and I was able to get a passing grade, which I was shocked about. I was shocked that I got the grade that I was able to get. I definitely feel like it was a lesson that like if I definitely tried harder, I probably would have gotten a higher grade. But I feel like that praying just kind of
helped you get to where you needed to get.
And I was able to pass.
Yeah,
good decent grade.
And I love hearing, you know, stories about this, because, you know, even Officer Charmaine shared the story that was so amazing about her own son and how, you know, he like leveled up his spirituality fast and he got into, you know, his top university of choice, which is so amazing. And it's like those stories really like cement just like not only your trust in your God of Israel, but also like the pride. Like I'm so like prideful of who I am, and just not willing to allow people to dim on that pride or light now at this point in my life. And so speaking of which, I want to ask you, like, what about being an Israelite makes you proud?
They don't have like everything that we have. Like when I think about like the New Year's and how it's in spring, like there's certain cultural or holy days that I see and I'm just like, wow, like I'm really proud to be an Israelite. I feel like one of my first feelings of this was when my brother had his cycle feast, and when I was seeing, it was just so cultural and beautiful, and it's just like, I'm so proud to be a part of this nation. And that's definitely something that I feel like when I see what we do, like our culture, all of it.
I could see that, especially because I think being quote unquote Black Americans, the slave trade and everything, we've lost a lot of our culture, like especially as Black Americans. So it's like sometimes you think about what your life would be like without Israel, and it would be like so bland, so bland. Like I even think about like the weddings. It's funny because for my birthday, I went out with my mom and aunties for that weekend to go to this like it's like a Pakistani Indian like mall, and I go there because I love getting jewelry. I love getting unique pieces. So my goal was to find some bangles. I found the coolest bangles. Actually, my mom did. It had a double triangle on it, and so my mom found that. I was like, "Ooh, good birthday present!" I was so happy with that find. But it was interesting because one of the girls there, I think she herself was like mixed with Black and Indian, and she was just like shopping for her wedding, and her friend was Black American, and she was like, oh, I just love their weddings. Like American weddings are so boring. And so I see what you say. It's like you get such like a rich culture that you can be prideful of, and like without that you would just be doing what everyone else is doing, and it's not nearly as fun or like as significant as it is with Israel, at least. So that's cool. And so I want to circle back to sort of close our discussion today. This has been so fun with you before. But I want to close out because earlier in the beginning, we just talked about like self-development, and like you mentioned an excellent point about just the idea of like progressing with your spirituality and feeling productive by getting closer to the God of Israel. So I want to ask you, and to my audience members, I also want you to put your answer to the same question in the chat now. How is Israel changing you for the better?
Changing for the better. I think it has to go back to what I'm saying, like after, you go to like a Saturday or Day of Atonement or just praying in the morning, I feel like you feel like a better person. I feel like you just want to do more things for the nation after that. Like most of my like times where a song inspiration comes, where I feel like I should like write a lyric, it will come from watching Saturdays or just going to Saturday service and kind of just being in that space. I feel like it can definitely increase so we can kind of give back to the nation.
Ooh, I love that.
I feel like that's definitely something that
it's like you get it's like when you go to service, you get these moments of inspiration. And it's like the God of Israel gives you that inspiration, and you're able to give it back to Him by like performing at a feast or something. I never thought of it like that.
Sometimes
it's like cyclical.
I will, to be honest with you, sometimes I will kind of ignore it a bit, but I think it just shows you that it's real and it does happen. Like that feeling of wanting to do something and give back. Sometimes I would be like, oh, well, I'm just going to chill for the rest of the day. But no, it's definitely something that I think people should kind of take note of. Like, you feel more inspired after and you want to give back.
That's so interesting you say that, because I remember, for those that don't know, when I was in pretty much my whole childhood life, I hate admitting this because I've taken such a turn, but I wanted to be a fashion designer. That's the one thing everyone knew about Rachel. She was going to be a fashion designer. And when I would pray at service, I would get images in my head, like you were saying. I would just see them, and I have a sketchbook. I don't know where it is actually, but I have an old sketchbook that has like the drawings that I would draw from that inspiration. So I think that's interesting that you said that, because I think as a writer, as an artist, sometimes you have like those art blocks where you can't push anything. And so thinking about how you can create a spiritual, and within means, guys, don't be crazy out here, but like just thinking like if the God of Israel is our source of life, like He must also then be like a source for inspiration. And so like how can you use the things that are in place for, our spirituality, like, our new moons, our Sabbaths, to further aid you in your art thing. But I love what you said. I think it's an important question about, how is Israel changing you for the better? I know Israel forces you to reflect on yourself a lot.
Sure.
And I think it forces you to see some of your faults, the good, the bad, the ugly. But what's really beautiful is the God of Israel is so merciful, and we have an opportunity to grow and move from that. So I feel like similarly in the way in which you've been able to reflect on like your talents and how you could get better with that and give back to the God of Israel. It's like Israel is changing me for the better because it allows me to not always focus on me, even though I am the main character of my life, I think everyone should be. It does force you to think about others because we're a nation, we're a community, and that's really beautiful because that forces you to be a more giving person, a more forgiving person, an accepting person, a person that wants to see others succeed because it means that we all succeed. So I love what you shared there today. But we're coming to an end on today's episode. If you liked what you heard and you want maybe even Deborah to come back for another episode, please put in the comments, give us your likes, subscribe. Also, continue to support the nation by tuning into our different programs. Every Friday, we have Friday night Bible study message, which occurs at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So come to the same channel to tune in. Have a lot of really cool, interesting topics there. And then every Saturday, you have the 2 p.m. Eastern Saturday messages that are also so amazing. You're getting so much content, guys. Tune in because it's amazing. And I can't forget about 5-5 for the youth, from the youth, which occurs every other Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you want some good late night vibes, feel like you're talking to just a group of friends with fun, engaging activities, highly recommend you tune into that show as well. But it's been a joy, Deborah, with you on this episode.
It's been
so fun. And it's been a joy having you all sit down and listen to us. We so appreciate the support, the likes, the comments. And so with that, we bid you peace.
Oh.